The next few slides are other examples of standards. So I moved through those because we're approaching the lunch piece. But this last piece, and I probably am going to run a little bit into that, so I apologize, probably 5 minutes late. But selected response, constructed response, those are the ones that we're asking to work on. This is back to a MAC slide now, so we're back to the MAC consortium slide. These are the different types, but for next time, we're asking you to come up with a constructed response and a selected response and a constructed response. And really, in a lot of ways, these three types kind of fit within this larger type. And then with a performance task, which is what we'll talk about when we get together in February, we'll talk more to that in that morning time, as well as reviewing these items. Projects fits really within that as well. And as I was watching those Mac videos last night, you saw that, especially I think it was Module 9 or the end of Module 8. They really get into the nitty-gritty of these item types and how those fit under those different depths of knowledge and where those are the best fit, if you will. So we're going to focus on those top two types. The benefits and limitations, again, of selected response. We know with the multiple choice piece, and this just reiterates some of that language. The purpose of constructed response items, so we want to address those targets and claims that are of greater complexity and require more analytical thinking and reasoning. So this is speaking to what this is going to look like. This is more of that smarter balance, and I think we took time initially, especially around those first two pieces, speaking to what smarter balance is promising around constructed response and selected response both. I've given you a couple examples of that. It does talk about the 1 to 5 minutes potentially, and if it's more complex, up to 10. Again, more of the MAC piece. This is a sample from the MAC. Here's your stimulus, here's the STEM, and the rubric. So when you're creating your constructed response, stimulus, STEM, and rubric. The reason that we show you this, and there's a template that's also in the Edmodo, but you want those pieces, the rubric, and we've included this in the Edmodo handouts as well. We're not suggesting that you need to create your own new rubric from scratch. Look at the Smarter Balance rubrics as they exist, and here's a model of what one of those looks like around an existing constructed response, albeit not social studies, but an existing. It's a 2-point rubric, and they gave the scoring notes to consider and then sample items. And we're not necessarily asking you to generate sample responses that would give a score, but you can see, you can see how that might be beneficial. So if you are doing one, if you feel so inclined, that'd be great to add, but it's not the requirement, if you will. But these are those different pieces, and again, these are on those slides. The stimulus, the question STEM, and then a rubric, and then if possible, sample would be great, but if not, that's not a required piece. And you can see that on the item template. The item template is listed in the Edmodo piece. General guidelines, again, concepts detailed in the standards for lower grades, clearly stated. So a lot of these things we've talked through. I also would reference you to the MAC handout/rubric that we gave you at the last session. This just kind of reviews those different components. Here is a flawed example, and again, I believe this is right off of the MAC, and I basically just getting at the text itself based for grade 7 is probably too easy. And take a look at the, it possibly doesn't align. And then what does the word crafty suggest about the fox? How does that wording fit and flow? So again, using that rubric and fleshing through that. What's that? Did you?
I said it's a subjective question.
Right. So then they have a well-written. This one, again, being around mold, so they've made the alignment, the depth of knowledge application. So there's your 7th grade text complexity. And if you're not sure about that, I mean, I can help you find that documentation. I mean, obviously your own instincts to your grade levels are suffice, but there are ways that we can look deeper into what are the quote-unquote Lexile levels, although it's more complex than that. It's not that simple. There are other things to consider. But if you were worried about complexity for any reason, I could get you resources to support your work around that. It does align based on how the question stem is put together there. And this is just to remind you that there are already rubrics that are out there. There are argumentative and informative both, so dependent upon the nature of the prompt that you put together. And those are already in the Edmodo. And if you see it even specifies C at the end of the particular document that's listed. So here's your homework. Then when we meet again in February, we'd like you to create one constructed response item with the rubric to upload. And it says revise and upload your selected response. If you haven't created it, then it would be create and submit the selected response. And then there is a template given. And then that additional homework is looking at those next modules of 10 and 12. And if you have selected or constructed responses done, we will probably follow a similar structure to how we started today, where if you bring the sample, we'll put them out, put a handful out, and then go around and kind of just give constructive feedback and then give it back to you. So I would see that first hour and a half of that time being very much similar to how it was this morning. And then the second portion of that morning would be then digging into the performance task. And then your work session next time would be working on your performance task. Or if you don't quite have these done yet, that's fine. Our parameters really on hard deadlines, for me, if I don't have a deadline, sometimes it's hard for me to get it done. But at the end of the day, it's not like you'll be docked your clock hours or credit or whatever. It just needs to be completed before we can sign off at the end, which will happen in May. So keep that in mind. We'll send out little reminders along the way, but this is our homework, and we can work on this afternoon. And I'll be here to support and answer questions and do all that. So this isn't something, unless you're choosing to go in other directions, which is fine. And if you do that, did you take the sign-out stuff? Shoot, I might have to get the sign-out thing for you. If you're doing sketches, if you're doing clock hours, I might have to go run and get that for you. I apologize in advance. But I don't want you to not get your credit hours because it's funky because it's a work time, but I am going to structure it and be here. But you don't have to be here. You're allowed to do independent work time. And that's it. So I'll leave this up. We can work on this. I apologize for going a little bit over. But I did want to dig into that piece, the blueprint, to kind of create a bigger context. So hopefully so that you wouldn't fall into maybe that piece that you saw from some of these other questions. All right? All right. Thank you for the morning. And thanks for the great discussions. I appreciate those. But we'll be around. But you've got as long as you want for lunch. But I'll be here in an hour. So anyways, thank you.